Welcome back viewers, ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries and anyone with ears or other sound detection organs. Hope you enjoy. We are continuing with Going Native, written by Uncle Sealing. Going Native, Chapter 45. Goddess, Celia, you look like shit. She stared numbly at herself, the mirror-polished surface of the lift door providing a perfect portal through which she could see what had been done to her. Done by House Chelzer, those damn humans, those military cunts, even the interior. Her head had been shaved, just a dark fuzz where here once long, luscious hair had been. It had been humiliating, though not nearly as bad as when they held her down and filed her tusks into short, rounded nubs. For her protection and those of the other inmates. She knew what it really was. With her long hair gone, her tusks short, in soft coveralls with slippers instead of proper boots, she looked weak. Soft. Like a male. The lift stopped, the doors opened. Celia let out a quiet sigh, then started walking before the two guards behind her could take an opportunity to entice her to move. They were good about finding any reason to pop her in the kidneys with an elbow or stomp a foot. They were wearing boots. Her toenails were already black from blood blisters thanks to not being fast enough over the last few days. Thankfully, it wasn't a long walk. The trial had been a small, private thing. Nobody wanted to publicly admit that the interior had spies inside the military, especially considering the amount of money she had stolen over the years for interior black book projects. She had to, of course. It was her duty as an interior agent. Except she wasn't an interior agent. Never had been. What was the phrase that cunt Jelsai Chelzer had used? A soft asset. She had been lied to, used by real agent Belle A.C. Alent, and was now the fall girl for all of that bitch's misdeeds. The evidence had been overwhelming and had painted Celia as a traitor to her military, her family, and the Imperium as a whole. If she took a moment to be honest with herself, something Celia tried to avoid as much as possible these days, it could have been even worse. What she had done recently was bad, some of the worst she had ever done, but the prosecution had missed a lot of her past actions. Not that it mattered. The doors opened and Celia stepped into the room of judgment. She noticed Colonel E. Itel sitting to the side, as well as a high-ranking interior administrator she didn't recognize. No sign of House Chelzer. The arbiter of justice sat in the middle, staring down from her high throne. As soon as Celia stood in front of the arbiter, she began to speak. Celia Merrick, the charges against you are varied and disturbing. You have been found guilty on all counts, some of the highlights including espionage, assault against a male, and the theft of government funds. The punishment for your crimes should be simple, but the sheer gravity of this situation gives me some creativity in this regard. To this end, I have decided to sentence you to 30 years of hard labor on a penal colony. Celia felt a little bit of hope there. She might actually survive this. She would be old and battered, but she could make it. The arbiter must have noticed the hope on Celia's face, because her own face broke into a sadistic grin. 30 years of hard labor. Followed by execution. This was really awkward. Merin was sitting topless in the hot tub, her husband snuggled up next to her. That much was fine. Having a naked Sammy and Samuel across from her was fine. Having Eustace Grant there, leaning against her husband from the other side, was significantly less fine. She realized, idly, that she had never actually had a conversation with the odd man. Perhaps never even said hello. She could be shy and the human had basically been either unconscious or holed up in his room ever since he arrived. The silence was getting uncomfortable, but Samuel stepped in. So, how have you been feeling, Stace? I'm fine. After a moment, Merin felt eyeing shift as he swung an elbow and hit Stace in the side. The man yelled in pain. Shit fuckdom, you hit my medical what's it? Oh goddess Stace, I'm sorry. I just wanted you to really answer the question, I didn't mean to hurt you. It's all right, just be gentle. Once the pain seemed to subside, Samuel spoke again. So, how have you been feeling, Stace? The other man had a small smile, but it didn't touch his eyes. Not that great. I have been getting stronger, feeling better physically, but it's hard. I feel. Stace frowned, then idly fingered the scar down his chest. Not like a person. Empty inside. You never think about how much of your body you actually feel. A skull rolled me outside the other day. I wanted to get one of those bright, clean breaths of cold air before winter was completely gone. You know the kind. Where you feel the chill all the way down to your bones. Everyone nodded. It turns out I can't do that anymore. Can't feel temperature with my lungs. I just end up hanging around feeling broken and, sort of useless. You're not useless. Sammy was bouncing up and down in their seat. It was hard for Marion to tell if it was nervous energy, Sammy energy, the rather staggering amount of alcohol the tiny physicist had imbibed, or some combination of the three. You kept eyeing and Ella alive, and if you hadn't stopped Celia she was planning to kill us or worse. You saved 5 people. They were clearly overexcited. I never did thank you. Marion reached her hand across Iing's lap and clasped Stace's hand. His whole body seemed to flinch, but didn't try to pull away. Had saving them really cost him that much? It's no prob. I just did. Stace took a moment to collect his thoughts. It was the right thing to do. Iing's arm, wrapped around Stace's shoulder, came up to rub through his hair again. You still didn't have to do it. The right thing isn't always easy. Stace's smile seemed a bit more genuine. It is for me. I promised my husband to do the right thing and always be kind. Have to keep my word. Sammy made a little squealing noise and clapped their hands. So, damn cool. Stace's face, already red from the heat and the steam coming off the water, seemed to get even darker. Their fan personing was clearly making him uncomfortable. Maybe Marion could help. How did you meet him? College. Don't know the shill word. Second school. I was studying biology, Daniel was studying organic chemistry. We had some of the same classes. Samuel smiled. In shill, college is college and organic chemistry is organic chemistry. Stace seemed to lose interest in the world for a moment as he spoke to himself, committing the words to memory. Thank you. We became friends. Daniel was comfortable to be around. I don't usually like people. It was nice. The silence that followed was pleasant. Marion decided to go for it, to keep the conversation flowing. Iing and I met in college too. Mathematics class. Samuel interrupted with the English translation. He asked me out, it was cute. That's not how it happened. Iing was indignant. You saved me from a rapist. Yeah, and then afterwards you asked me out. Stace actually giggled. Marion tilted her head and looked at him. You two are a cute couple. Fit together well. Stace looked across the hot tub. You too. Samuel looked like he was about to speak, but Sammy got there first. They were a bouncy bubble of energy. We grew up together. Lived on the same street since we were. How old? 4. Right. We went to school together and finally started dating in college after Samuel struck out with everyone else on campus. I knew if I waited I would eventually be able to get him in my clutches. Sammy, that really just makes me sound like a horrible flirt and makes you sound really desperate. He thought about it for a moment. But it is actually fairly accurate. The important thing is we all got together in college. It's a singularity. Another silence followed, then Sammy put a hand next to their mouth and loudly stage whispered at Stace. I got a scholarship. That's nice. Stace smiled politely at her. Did you get a scholarship? No, I got by with student loans and bartending 4 nights a week. Stace's smile got a little more genuine, his mismatched eyes twinkling in the light as he thought back to days long ago. Daniel paid off my loans as a present. It was really awkward. For a while I thought he was just sort of making fun of me. Buying me? Hard to explain. Then I realized he just wanted me to be happy. What sort of bar? Samuel thought about it. I could see you mixing at a trendy hipster place. Would suit you well. Lots of different places. Stace reached across the hot tub with his right hand, then used his left to point out the fine, pale line of a scar on the back of his hand, parallel to the fingers. Then he flipped his hand over and pointed out a matching scar on the palm. That kind of bar. Oh damn. Work a lot of jobs. Before college, growing up, I worked for my dad. Fixed farm equipment, sort of general mechanic. After college I taught biology. Sammy's squeal brought the conversation to a halt. They were practically vibrating. When you're all fixed up, you can help us out. We need a hand-eye person. It's Samuel's job but he can't handle it all. He needs to help with the research. Stace shook his head in the negative. I don't understand a lot of this stuff. Too new. Complicated. Can you weld? Samuel looked serious. Thoughtful. Oxy and stick. Okay with MIG, terrible with TIG. Can you work a Bridgeport? Stace raised a hand parallel to the floor and wiggled it. Enough to get into trouble. He can sew too. Ian was smiling even harder than Sammy was. And he can cook and do woodworking. And leather stuff. Samuel nodded before his smooth, pale features broke into a smile. How does that sound, Stace? Take your time healing up. I can get you some books to help you get up to speed if you'd like, and, honestly, there's a lot to do. Your family and you've done so much for us. If you wanted to retire, none of us would blame you. We'd be happy just to have you around. But if you want to work, there's work. That would be really nice. Thank you. Stace was grinning, but tears were streaming down his face from his mismatched eyes. Marin couldn't help it. She leaned over Ian and wrapped the pair of them in one big hug. This time he didn't flinch. Stace is going to need some tools. Oh. And a measuring tape. Ian seemed just as excited as Sammy. Marin could feel the nervous energy through the hug. Why does he need a measuring tape? Samuel sounded confused. I mean, obviously, but why that specifically? He didn't have one at the cabin. Don't need one. Stace shrugged his way out of the hug with a sniffle. What do you mean, don't need one? If we had one, I could show you. Samuel jumped out of the tub and slid naked to the pile of clothes. Marin took the time to admire his tight ass, the lines of the muscles in his back, and the complicated geometric tattoo running between his shoulder blades and down his spine. In moments, Samuel was back with a tiny tape measure attached to a keychain. He offered it to Stace, but the other man declined it with a hand wave. Is it inches or metric? Both. Sammy, hold up your hands. They did so, and Stace looked at the space between them from across the hot tub. 11¼ inches. Samuel held up the measuring tape, then glanced back at Stace with a raised eyebrow. Oh. How about this? Sammy's arms went wider. 29½, no, 3/8. Stop moving. Samuel dutifully measured. How the fuck are you doing that? Stace shrugged. Kept losing tape measures. This is easier. How about this? In metric. Sammy pulled their arms together. 18.5 centimeters. Now. 2 fingers in a pinching motion, not quite touching. About 5 millimeters. Hard to be accurate because you keep moving. So. Freaking. Cool. Marin had to agree. Really? Yeah. He was actually crying. I don't think I've seen him that happy since we were back in the cabin. Elora was reading through some paperwork on her pad. It was frustrating how much paperwork just appeared. They had caught 2 more humans prowling around the area in the last week. If this kept up, they were going to end up having to put in a proper wall. Unfortunately, Sammy and Samuel both wanted to make sure this place stayed more of a science institution and less of a military base. That meant more patrols, more drones, and more idiots trying to sneak their way in. She was sitting on the bed in Iing's room, up against the headboard. Iing was in her lap, writing something on his own pad. He had been doing that a lot lately. It was comfortable, and moments like these didn't come often enough. Elora was attached to Stace and, even if their status was vague to the outside world, it might be improper if Elora was physical with Iing in public. It would make it look like she had 2 males, and that would be problematic. Even if it was true. So, Stace wants to help. How can we help him help? He's still in really rough shape and needs a lot of physical therapy. I have a few ideas. Some of it has to do with security on the base. He used to teach. Think the security team would be up for some Earth survival classes. Iing was flicking through a list on his pad. I'm sure they would love it once he's well and can take them out into the mountains. If it's in a classroom, they'll probably bitch and moan, but they'd still do it. I don't want us to set something up for him that's obviously us pandering for his benefit. Stace is smart enough that if we're just making work for him, he's bound to notice. Elora didn't want to crush Stace with something useless, but Iing was right. Stace needed to be useful to be happy. Good point. Iing flicked his fingers some more. I want to see about getting him some hand tools. Do you think we could partition off part of a conference room and turn it into a little workshop? Elora nodded. I don't see why not. We'd have to clear it with Sammy, but I doubt they'd care. Why a conference room, though? His living room is plenty big and he doesn't really use it. Stace just spends all his time in that little cabin room. Oh, it's my devious plan. Iing squirmed in Elora's lap, clearly trying to wind her up. Of course, she didn't mind in the least. What's that? Stace was never good with people, right? And after so long in the cabin, he basically freaks out any time he has to deal with someone who isn't you, me, or maybe a skill. If we set up his workshop in a conference room, he'll have to leave his room to go there and come back. People will see him, he will see people, and he can slowly start getting used to it again. That was a pretty good idea, actually. You know, I just realized something. Elora let out a small frown. I don't think Stace has ever actually been in the observatory building while not in a medically induced coma. Ooh. Iing started bouncing on Elora's lap. We should give him a tour. I'm going to give you something. Elora sat her pad on the end table and wrapped her arms around her boyfriend. She had a boyfriend. Hands started running over his body, and Iing got the message. He put his own pad on the other end table and leaned his head back against Elora's chest. Stace had work to do. It was mostly busy work, given to him by friends who just wanted to keep him happy, but it was something. It was a future, something to look forward to. Settle down. You're going to hurt yourself if you overdo it. Eskel's voice was cutesy in its chiding, but Stace knew he meant it. Obediently, Stace slowed down and continued his reps. He was sitting on a bench in the medical room, a fancy elastic band providing resistance as he tried extending his legs one at a time. Stace had thought it would be easy, even after months of inactivity it didn't seem like much. Instead, it was horribly tiring. Sorry. I just, excited. I know, Stace. You've told me 6 times now how you braved the great outside world to hang out with sexy naked folks and get a job offer. I didn't say they were sexy. Eskel let off a little cough. Well, I mean, I know you like eyeing, and the 2 humans. Stace could hear the awkward blush on Eskel's face, even if the Helcom was looking down so he couldn't see it. What's that about Sam and Sam? Stace grinned down at Eskel. I didn't say they were sexy. I'm pretty sure you did. They were the ones who were naked. Can we stop talking about this please? Sure. I'm just teasing. Stace reached out a hand and put it on the Helcom's shoulder. Did I take it too far? I didn't mean to make you upset, I'm just ragging on you a little. Eskel looked up at him and Stace could see hurt in his huge green eyes. Why? It's mean. Stace sighed. Honestly? Because I like you. Confusion flashed on Eskel's face along with panic. Not like that. Calm down. You're comfortable to be around. Like a little brother, or a cousin. And teasing family is just kind of human tradition I guess. It's what you do. Stace shrugged. I will stop. I'm sorry. Eskel sniffed a little. I'm family. Of course you are. Even if you hadn't saved my life, you're nice and you're fun and you let me beat you at chess. Eskel's eyes were filled with tears, but now he was smiling. Stace, you're terrible at chess. I win almost every game and I've only been playing for a week. Nah, I was just taking it easy on you. Next time I'll really kick your ass. Really? Kick my ass. Eskel made a point of waving his arm in the space where the bottom of Stace's left leg once was. How do you intend to do that? Stace snorted and laughed. Fair enough. Suddenly, Eskel got serious. How was that? How was what? The teasing. He was shy again, hiding his eyes. It was like what my sisters do to each other. Nobody ever talked like that with me. Stace leaned forward and grabbed the small man, pulling him into a tight hug. You did great. End of chapter. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss any episode and do all the other YouTube stuff, visit and support the author, and I'll see you next time. If you didn't enjoy, comment on what I can do better. And as usual, have a wonderful day.